Good morning, distinguished shareholders. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Board of Directors and myself to Neinor Homes General Shareholders Meeting for 2020, especially bearing in mind the unfortunate circumstances we are living. We are amidst uncertain and difficult times, and this is precisely the reason why I'd like to start by thanking you on behalf of the company and myself for all the work that you have carried out in the past few weeks. I'd like to thank each one of you who, in the 52 promotions that we have, who've tirelessly worked in the most difficult circumstances. I'd like to thank the contractors, the craftsmen, and many trades that have tirelessly worked. And I'd like to thank also every single member of the Neinor Homes family. Over the past few weeks, from your homes, you have pursued your endeavors amidst the most difficult circumstances, as you did in 2019 and for the first 2 months of 2020, that have allowed us to achieve excellent results. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you who, despite the circumstances, have strongly worked in the past few days amongst an environment of extreme uncertainty in order to organize this general shareholders meeting, pursuant to the rules, restrictions, and health and security measures imposed by the royal decree that put forward the state of alert as a consequence of the COVID-19 crisis. Likewise, I'd like to thank the understanding of our shareholders who, in this situation, have made use of the telematic means made available by the company to all of those who are following the general shareholders meeting on the streaming capabilities. At the beginning of my statement, I talked about the uncertain period we are living, and this uncertainty is clearly shown on the new restriction measures imposed upon economic activity, as well as the confinement and lockdown of the entire population imposed by the authorities as the pandemic had progressed. As you all know, the latest modifications approved by the cabinet meeting on Sunday meant the entire lockdown of all non-essential activities, which includes the construction activity since the 30th of March until the 9th of April. At the moment, we are unaware if these temporary measures are going to be extended, but it seems logical to have stopped all the activities, and Neinor Homes is working tirelessly with construction companies in order to resume these works as soon as possible and in order to adjust the plannings and timelines in order to minimize the impact. I'm going to hand over the floor to the CEO of the company, Borja García Egocheaga Vergara, in order to inform about the current situation facing the company amidst the COVID crisis.
I'd like to start by thanking all the attendees to this ordinary general shareholders meeting of Neinor Homes, as Ricardo anticipated, to this GSM that is going to walk you through the 2019 results. Before I do so, I will give you a brief update on the current situation and the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis. In order to facilitate this presentation, you can open the slides titled COVID-19. I would like to start by mentioning that the measures undertaken by the company at the beginning of March were aimed at protecting the healthcare of our workers, clients, and suppliers, and everyone in the Neinor Homes family. Likewise, in March, we have progressively implemented telework for an entire headcount, which is something quite common for our employees, but obviously it had never reached the current dimensions. I would like to state that we are very pleased about the excellence from the technological point of view that we have observed from day one and the level of commitment and performance of our teams. Moreover, we have also reinforced our health and safety at work protocols in coordination with the construction companies, thus incorporating the best practices and advice of the Spanish Ministry of Health and the WHO. Vis-a-vis our customers and clients, we have also allowed them to have a deferral payment on the monthly installments for everyone who wishes to do so. Everything has been done in full coordination with the industry associations nationally and regionally, with whom we can maintain a very smooth, intense contact over the past few days. On the next slide, you will have a full detail impact and the full breakdown of the operating issues and financial figures. In view of this crisis, first of all, we analyze our financial situation. And even in these moments of very low visibility in the evolution of the pandemic and its consequences, we have considered different scenarios and we have analyzed the visibility of the company. And I'd like to start by restating the strength and the financial muscle of Neinor Homes, thanks to the very conservative stance that we have maintained in the last 18 months with regards to land acquisition. And in certain sectors, it hasn't been well approved, but we are now having a very robust cash level that allows us to have a very good financial muscle. Not only that, but we have very low leverage and very interesting maturities. In 2019, please note that we refinanced the sole corporate debt and its maturity has been postponed until December 2022. Combined with very contained overheads, and we add on the recurring revenues provided by our servicing agreement, we can now confirm that we are facing the best optimal position to face this crisis. Now, work-related and the work side, first of all, we need to improve, and we have incremented the health and safety at work protocols in every single development promotion, thus intensifying the control that we carry out in each one of them. Therefore, we have managed to continue constructing at a level of 80% roughly on the second fortnight of March. Since this week, with the entry into force of the new royal decree published on Sunday, we came to a controlled temporary halt until the 9th of April of all our works. But we continue to work with every single construction company in order to resume work as soon as possible. With regards to the trading activity, with the new state of alert, we suffered a major decline in leads generation, telephone contacts of clients interested in purchasing a house. For the time being, we can claim that we are making sufficient progress in leads generation thanks to a wonderful marketing campaign that was launched the very same week the state of alert was declared. Likewise, and in order to beat the limitations of the confinement measures and the lockdown in our homes, we have implemented a system of visits online, 100% virtual. I highly encourage all of you to take a look at the campaign and to test our new online sales system that clearly shows us the good reaction capacity and the adaptation to changes that we have proven. Lastly, within the contention measures and in relation with the proposal of approval of dividend, the board will decide about the amount and the moment of payout when we gain further visibility of the evolution and consequences of the pandemic led by the COVID-19 crisis. Related to land acquisition, although the focus today is protect our cash, it is very important to stress out that we continue analyzing greater and new opportunities every single day. Let's move on to slide number 4 with some final thoughts. Obviously, it's too early to run any reasonable forecast, business forecast in the medium run, but I'd like to stress out the value offered by Neinor Homes, which is paramount amidst this crisis. We are facing a great financial position to face this crisis. We have a robust cash position with very low leverage and a very adequate structure. This allows us to protect the value of our assets. We have the best-in-class land bank in regions where there is huge structural demand for households. 80% of our land is located in different stages of the development cycle with very good pre-sales volumes, as we will see later on the presentation. Moreover, our platform, Neinor Rental, is fully up and running under execution. And this isn't it. We are highly convinced that amidst a crisis, we can also find opportunities, and we are going to make our best to maximize such opportunities. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm going to hand over the floor again to the Chairman of the Board of Directors, Mr. Ricardo Martín Fluxa, who will proceed with the agenda for this General Shareholders Meeting. Thank you very much indeed, Ricardo. You have the floor. Thank you. Thank you, Borja. The GSM we're about to convene and hold has Ms. Raquel Ruiz Torres, the Notary Public belonging to the Illustrious Association of Notary Publics of the Basque Region of Spain, that has been requested by the Board of Directors to reflect the minutes of this GSM pursuant to Article 203 of the Companies Act and its relevant provisions. I would like to kindly request the Notary Public to introduce herself, so the distinguished shareholders can identify her. Good morning. My name is Raquel Ruiz Torres. I will reflect the minutes through the electronic platform for streaming purposes that has been reflected on the company's website pursuant to Chapter 7 of Article 40 of the Royal Decree of the 17th of March. Thank you very much indeed. Pursuant to the articles of the GSM, those shareholders willing to intervene in the GSM request additional information, clarifications with regards to the matters covered in the agenda, the information accessible to the public facilitated by the company to the Spanish Securities and Exchange Commission, CNMV, since the last GSM. The auditor's account, or willing to receive additional information or make proposals, can do so by linking on the link of the streaming website for this GSM. The distinguished shareholders are kindly reminded that pursuant to the Companies Act in Spain, the only matters covered by the right of information now are as follows. Clarification about A, matters covered in the agenda. B, information made accessible to the public facilitated by the company to the Spanish Securities and Exchange Commission since the last GSM. And or the auditor's report. Likewise, the distinguished shareholders are kindly informed that the voting channels are soon to be closed related to the matters covered in the agenda. I'm going to call it to order. Thus, starting the GSM for 2019, I'm going to hand over the floor to the Secretary of the Board of Directors, Ms. Silvia López Jiménez. Thank you. Distinguished Chairman, thank you very much for your kind words, and welcome to all the attendees. The GSM we're about to convene has been duly called by the agreement of the Board of Directors on the 26th of February 2020, pursuant to the Companies Act, the Companies bylaws, and also the GSM's regulation. Neinor Homes published the announcement of this call on the 29th of February 2020 on the company's website and on the website of the Spanish Securities and Exchange Commission and the El Mundo newspaper. Likewise, I'd like to kindly remind the shareholders that pursuant to Article 16.3 of the GSM's regulation, attendees may not use photography, video, recording devices and smartphones or similar, with the exception of those required for attending these GSM telematically. Pursuant to the company's bylaws and the Royal Decree 8/2020 adopted as a consequence of the COVID crisis, we duly call it to order. This GSM of Neinor Homes, chaired by the chairman of the company, the secretary, and the members of the board of directors and a notary public. The chairman and secretary are those chairman and secretary of the board of directors, that is Mr. Ricardo Martin Fluxa and myself. I'm going to recount the final list of attendees. Having drafted the list of attendees using the IT support and based on the information rendered by the professional organizational service hired by the company, there is a provisional quorum as follows. This GSM is attended by 8 shareholders holding 5,236,089 shares, accounting for 6.6265% of the share capital. And represented in this GSM, we have 26 shareholders holding 37,907,000 shares, accounting for 47% of the share capital. As a consequence, in this GSM, we have the following attendees present and represented, with a total of 35 shareholders holding 43,144,056 shares, holding a share capital of 54 million, and subscribed share capital with voting rights, which is 790,050,340 shares, with 10 euros in nominal value. Pursuant to Article 148 of the Spanish Companies Act, the treasury stock has been accounted for in order to calculate the necessary amounts to convene the agreement, although those votes corresponding to such shares cannot be exercised, being suspended with the other political rights incorporated to these shares, pursuant to Article 148, Chapter A of the Spanish Companies Act. Likewise, pursuant to Article 26 of the GSM's regulation, we'd like to restate that the shareholders who've had cast their vote telematically will be deemed as attending this GSM for the purposes of the constitution of this GSM. Distinguished Chairman, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Distinguished Secretary. As a consequence, we have that total subscribed capital with the voting rights on second call as requested by the Companies Act in order to cover the matters included on the agenda, notwithstanding the final quorum information that the company's organizational services will render as soon as possible, and that will be duly reflected on the company's minutes, on these GSM's minutes. I therefore declare the meeting to be validly convened and call it to order. I'm going to hand over the Secretary to the Notary Public. Pursuant to Article 101 of the Mercantile Register, I'm going to ask the following question. Is any shareholder willing to make any reservations or protest about the manifestations related to the provisional number of shareholders attending and the represented share capital? If that is the case, you can notify using the telematic means established by the streaming platform used for this GSM. Likewise, as soon as I receive the final figures, if there are any relevant variations, I will notify all the attendees. In any case, the final quorum will be duly reflected on the minutes of the board and on the minutes of the GSM. I'm going to hand over the floor to the Secretary to read the announcement of this call. As it was mentioned, Neinor Homes published the announcement of the call on the 29th of February 2020 on the company's website, on the website of the Spanish Securities and Exchange Commission, and on the El Mundo newspaper. Since it's a very long announcement, and you may know all of it, I consider it as read. If you wish to request its reading, I kindly request the shareholders to identify themselves with their name card and the number of withholding shares. We will wait for a few minutes in order to see if any shareholders are requesting it. Nobody is requesting it. We deem it as read. In the announcement of the call, we explicitly refer to the right of shareholders to obtain the agreement proposals of this GSM and additional documentation, and it has been received by those who requested it. In any case, shareholders could request and receive printed copies of these documents that have been made available on the company's website. And in order to speed up this GSM, we deem it as read. We deem as read all the documents and everything necessary for the purposes of this meeting. I'm going to hand over the floor to the CEO of the company, Borja García Egoitxeaga Vergara. Thank you very much indeed, Sylvia. We're going to now give you a quick update on the company's results and the most relevant events happened in 2019 in April when I was appointed the CEO of the company. We approved a very ambitious business plan. Today, a year on, I can confirm that 2019 has been an excellent year for Neinor Homes. In 2019, we have clearly proven our operating efficiency. We can restate clearly that our real estate development platform is working perfectly, thus leading the real estate industry in Spain. Without further ado, we're going to take a look at our results. In order to facilitate its reading, I kindly request you to take a look at the presentation on your screens, and we will also publish it on our website alongside with the other presentation related to the current situation as a consequence of the COVID-19 crisis. Let's move on to slide number 7, which includes a summary of the most important milestones achieved by the company in 2019. And I'd like to kindly remind the excellent results that we have achieved, thus exceeding the expectations of our BP, thus closing 2019 with an approximate revenues of 500 million euros, thus reaching an adjusted EBITDA of 104 million euros and net income of 64 million euros. This is the net income of the company. This is unseen in this sector nationally, which represents an increase of the revenues by more than 40%, and we have doubled our adjusted EBITDA on the previous year. On the next slide, we are going to carefully analyze the top operating results of the company achieved in 2019. Undoubtedly, we are starting from a very good solid ground. We have the best land bank in Spain with 11,000 units distributed in the 6 top growth Spanish regions, places where structural demand exceeds supply. The continuous work of the past few exercises has allowed us to gain some ample visibility of the developer's business on our land portfolio, where more than 75% has been launched already and in different stages on the production stage. At the year-end closing, the company had more than 5,000 units under construction, having launched more than 2,700 units in 2019. Neinor Homes was also the clear leader in the Spanish national market with 1,269 delivered units in line with our BP. From a sales perspective, 2019, which in certain moments was duly marked by certain shadows and gloomy sights about slowdown, can be now certified as a clear success. We have closed with an order book, so those aggregate pre-sales of 2,660 units, which represents 900 million euros, thus reaching pre-sales of more than 1,400 units for the exercise, perfectly distributed pursuant to our commercial strategy, thus having a sales volume in different percentages based on the year of delivery of those units. A key variable of the operations of the company is a clear defense of the developer's gross margin, which for 2019 was expected to be at 28%. In order to achieve such margin, a fundamental role is a balance between the increase of prices that the company can incorporate in the household sales, which is 5% in this case, and the inflation of operating costs that the company has to defend, where we have the construction costs, most importantly, which in Neinor Homes experienced a growth of 4.7% in 2019. As a result of the exceptional management by the company, we have closed the year with a developer's gross margin of 30%, thus clearly exceeding the most optimistic expectations. Ultimately, and well, last but not least, the company continues its servicing activity, which is also generating a robust operating margin in every single exercise. This is a business that oftentimes is not well seen, but this ensures a recurring cash flow, and it's especially relevant in environments of uncertainty like the one in the upcoming months as a consequence of the pandemic. Let's move on to slide number 9, where we will take a look at the financial results. First of all, I'd like to stress out that now, especially now, after the situation generated by the coronavirus crisis, the high liquidity of cash that we have in 2019 with 173 million euros, out of which 43 of them were anticipations to clients. Not only that, but the company has maintained a very low leverage level. Part of it, and a big part of it, is CAPEX debt that has already been committed, and we have drew down as we move forward with the work certifications. The corporate debt accounts for 50 million euros that were refinanced at the end of 2019 with a maturity in December 2022. With all these, we have managed to reduce our leverage ratio by 3 points related to 2018, reaching a loan-to-value of 16%. A very important part of such liquidity is partly due to the strategy followed in this exercise, where we decided not to purchase relevant pieces of land while we saw a market of land that was overvalued in our understanding. And we anticipated already a huge correction. And since the beginning of 2020, we have seen a more adjusted land market, and we are already working in order to maximize the best transactions. The year closed with a net asset value of 1.3 billion euros and a buyback policy of 49.3 million euros in line with the first tranche of the approved program for buybacks. Lastly, the next slides walk you through the launch of Neinor Rental. In our April presentation in 2019, we said we were going to exceed our expectations, but we were going to closely look at the new and upcoming opportunities. Today, this is already a reality. We launched Neinor Rental with the objective to reach 5,000 residential units under rentals. This rental business presents a good opportunity in Spain because there is very limited institutional product offer, and we are, as developers, the best positioned to capitalize this business. This business line is complementary to our traditional core business, and it allows us to capture additional value to our shareholders. To conclude, I'd like to go back to the origin of Neinor Homes and the solid grounds of the developer's business. Neinor Homes is a good historical company with a very strong track record of 32 years of experience since the beginning of the Basque region of Spain, always betting on the quality innovation in every single product. The industry has been and will continue to be a growth engine in Spain, and we are proud to lead the sector. That's the reason why I'd like to thank the big family of Neinor Homes. I'd like to thank each one of the 275 employees that work tirelessly every day, giving the best out of themselves in order to beat our expectations, and that's the reason why we are extremely proud of this company. Thank you very much indeed, and I'm going to hand over the floor to the chairman of the board of directors, Mr. Ricardo Martin Flexa, who's going to inform about the current situation facing the company in terms of good governance, corporate governance. Thank you very much indeed. As stated by the CEO, I will proceed to inform the distinguished shareholders about the most relevant aspects in the field of corporate governance. Apart from the information made available to all the shareholders in the annual corporate governance report for 2019 that you can always access through the company's website and also through the CNMV's website, I'd like to restate that the company and the board of directors have maintained a very strong commitment to meet the best standards in good corporate governance. Namely, for the third year in a row as a listed company, Neinor Homes has reached almost all the recommendations, 98% of the recommendations of the good governance practices for listed companies that are applicable to our company. Therefore, I'm very pleased to announce to the distinguished shareholders the relevance and importance given to corporate governance practices in this company, and to restate our very strong commitment to a good governance system based on accountability and ethics, the reason why we are voluntarily applying the best national and international practices in order to ensure that the governance bodies respond to the needs of the groups of interest simultaneously and in a sustained fashion. I believe the time has come to start the round of presentations, giving floor to the request of the shareholders that have requested their participation in this GSM through the telematic platform. We're going to just leave a few minutes and wait and see if any shareholder is willing to intervene. No shareholder is willing to intervene, so I can continue. Thank you very much, distinguished secretary. I'm going to hand over the floor to inform about the voting of the agreed proposals. Pursuant to the GSM's regulations, we will deem votes in favor of the proposals formulated, those corresponding to all the shares represented and present in this GSM that have not had suspended their voting rights by virtue of Article 148 of the Spanish Companies Act. Deducting A, votes corresponding to shares whose shareholders or representatives vote against, blank, or abstain through the communication or express announcement of such abstention or a vote against to the notary public by using the telematic means of this GSM. 2, votes corresponding to shares whose shareholders have voted against, blank, or have abstained through the telematic means. And 3, votes corresponding to shares whose shareholders or representatives have abandoned the meeting before the voting of the agreement proposal and have notified such abandonment. The minutes of these GSM will reflect the votes against, blank, and abstentions as a consequence of the proxies and those distance votings received before these GSM, as well as those votes against, blank, and abstentions formulated to the notary public by shareholders and representatives attending this GSM for every single agreement proposal. Bearing in mind the above, we have agreed that if any shareholder is willing to reflect their votes against, blank, or abstentions on the minutes of the board with regard to certain agreements, they can communicate it by using the telematic means in accordance with the company's bylaws and the GSM's regulation. I kindly remind you that the agreements subject to this GSM shall be deemed as approved when there are no more votes against than in favor, corresponding to the present and represented shares. Based on the information rendered by the corporate services of the company, I communicate to the shareholders that have issued and cast their ballot in favor on the approval of all the matters included on the agenda. Just like every year, and by virtue of Article 525 of the Spanish Companies Act, we are going to provide this information to shareholders on the company's website with the full list of adopted agreements, thus reflecting the total voting and the votes in favor, against, blank, or abstentions through this GSM. Since the chairman is empowered to deem as approved these agreements when he has the full existence of sufficient votes in favor, notwithstanding the reflection on the minutes of the board of all those votes against or abstentions, we are now going to proceed to deem as read the agreements adopted by the board of directors that have been approved by the GSM. Thank you very much indeed. We deem as approved all the agreements, notwithstanding the abstentions and votes against that may be reflected in each one of those proposals. The detailed result of the voting and everything that happened on the GSM shall be duly reflected on the minutes of the board. Given its notarial nature, we do not need to subject to its voting to the shareholders, and the notary public will carry out the relevant proceedings in this regard. I shall deem this GSM as finished, and I'd like to kindly send you my best wishes amidst these tough times that hopefully are brief to all of us. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much indeed, and have a wonderful day.